This video will cover the lesson called Lists, Naming Ranges and Cells, as well as Data Validation. As we're going through, we're going to start with our general ledger listing, which will be the first data file included in the lesson. So if you go ahead and open up the data file, you will see in the worksheet that there are two separate worksheets included within the file. The first one is called General Ledger Listing. The second one is called Journal Entry or JE Form. In the General Ledger Listing, you will see that there are two columns of data. First one is called Account Number. Second one is called Account Description. On our Journal Entry form, you'll see that there's various fields that we want to go ahead and we want to complete. Starting off with the account number and the account description, we're going to go ahead and insert a list of acceptable values for the individual user to go ahead and to input. Now, you use a list when you want to minimize or restrict the values that someone can put into a particular cell or field, and this allows the user to have a menu selection of available choices. If they want to select something that is outside of that range, it does not allow them to either enter it or to select something that's not included within the particular list. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead into the cell where we want the list to be inserted. So in cell B2, you will go up to your data ribbon. You will go to Data Validation under your Data Tools, and you will go ahead and select Data Validation. You should see a pop-up box that emerges. By default, the validation criteria in each and every cell in Excel is to allow any value to be entered, so that there's no restrictions on text, numeric, any sort of value that could be entered. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and select the list value. From there, you'll notice that the source field will open and populate, and it gives you this little option. If you click on it, it allows you to go ahead and select a range of values. So for the account number, what we're going to do is go to the General Ledger Listing worksheet. We're going to select the range of cells starting with A2. Notice that I did not select the title, and we're going to go all the way down to A55. If you go ahead and select OK, and also notice as I'm selecting a range of cells, it is automatically an absolute reference. That means if I were to copy this formula down or copy this list down to another cell, it would keep that range of cells locked in position. If I go ahead and click OK, you'll notice underneath account number in cell B2 there will be a drop-down option, and you'll see that it will put all of the values that we selected in some type of numerical order, or if it's text, it will put it in alphabetical order. So it would allow the user to go ahead and to select any value that is listed there. Additionally, you could go into the cell and you could start typing in a value, and if it is acceptable, it will go ahead and enter the value, or it will accept that value. So it does not necessarily, you don't necessarily need to use a drop-down list to select. You can also manually type in a value. The value that you type in just has to be in the list for it to be accepted. So for example, if we went to the cell and we just typed in 10,000, we should get an error message where telling us that the value is not valid and that the user has restricted these values, and therefore we need to go ahead and retry. Okay, so we'll give you another option to go ahead and to select a different value. We could do the same thing in our account description field as well to the account descriptions that we have listed here in column B. Okay, there is potential risk if we do two lists that the person would select an account number that does not align with the account description. So a better way to do that would be to insert a VLOOKUP into this particular cell called account description, and if an individual user were to enter in a value under account number, the account description would auto-populate based off of our VLOOKUP. Okay, we won't go into that right now, but that's just the best way to be able to do it. Additionally, if you wanted to copy down your list, what you can do is if you drag down the list that you created in cell B2 to B3, you'll notice that it gives you the same range of options. So you can go ahead and copy it. If you wanted to remove it, it's a little bit trickier where you want to go back to your data validation, and actually that's not where we want to go. We want to go to our name manager. Okay, so it took me a minute to figure that out, so I put the video on pause. But what you want to do is if I copy and drag down the list, initially it's difficult to figure out exactly how I would go about removing it. So what you want to do is go to your home ribbon, you want to go over to editing, and you want to go ahead and click clear all. That will remove the list if you copied it down in error. Moving over to our date range or our date field, what we can do here is we can also put in a type of data validation a little bit different. So go to your data ribbon, go to data validation, Okay, here we can go ahead and now we are going to select a date. So once again, you can go ahead and choose to restrict dates between certain values, not between equal to, greater than, less than, greater than, or equal to. So we have options. For most values, so let's say we wanted to select ranges of date patterns. So let's say we wanted to restrict access from 3/1/2016, and we want the ending date to be 3/31/2016. So we're allowing journal entries to occur in the current month and not outside of that range. We could go ahead and click OK. Now that we've applied and notice there's no drop down, there's no indicator that there's any sort of data validation on this particular cell. We won't know it until we get to the point of doing some type of entry where if I go ahead and enter the date 3/2/2016, you'll notice that it enters and it's fine. However, if I go ahead and I enter 2/29/2016, I should get an error message telling us that that's not valid, and it allows me the option to go ahead and to retry. Okay, so it does restrict. Data validation also allows you to do some other types of data validation where I can restrict whole number of decimals. The list we already covered. You can do some type of date, time. You can also do some type of text length. So I want to, let's say for example, I want it to be equal to. So for example, if you have a field that's a zip code, you want it to be equal to 5, a value of 5. Okay, so that means that if you do any type of 4 or any type of value that's 6, it should get you some type of error message. Additionally, in the data validation, you'll notice that there is an option for us to go ahead and let's go ahead and do 5. So let's say this field was for a zip code. If we go to our input message, it allows you to give a title to it as well as an input message to the user. So for this one, because we're going to enter in a zip code, we'll go ahead and title it a zip code, and we'll say, please enter in a 5-digit zip code. Also, too, there's an option for an error alert, and there's 3 different types. There's a stop, which will stop the user from entering in a value that's not included. There's a warning, which will tell you this is not an acceptable answer, but it'll allow you to click OK and to click through. And then there's an informational warning that'll come up and just say, you know, kind of an FYI, and it won't stop you from continuing. In the instance where you only want somebody to enter in a 5-digit value, you would want your stop to show up. You can as well give a title to the error message that will show. So we'll label this as invalid zip code, and our error message will be the zip code entered was not 5 digits. Okay, keep in mind that the error messages, we're somewhat limited here because we can't identify that it's an actual numerical value. It's just going to be looking for a length equal to 5. So somebody could potentially put in a word that's 5 and it will be accepted. So it's not the most perfect input control, but it is a form of input control nonetheless. Okay, so you'll notice now, and I put it in under the account description, if you're hovering over the cell, you'll see that it gives the name of the actual data validation rule we put in called zip code. Please enter in a 5-digit zip code for the user. So if I go ahead and I enter in a zip code, it'll get entered. But also too, like I said, if I enter in some sort of text that's equal to 5 characters, it's also going to accept it. So once again, not the most perfect control, but it is a control nonetheless. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to talk about naming our ranges. So what you would, and either naming a cell or naming a range is really helpful when you're writing formulas. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and open up the sales tax table, which is a data file that's included in your VLOOKUP lesson, so lesson number 3. And you'll notice in there that we have a bunch of sales transactions. We also have a sales tax table. So for example, if I were using this to go ahead and to retrieve the sales tax rate based off of the county that's entered here, I can go into my sales tax table and for the various values, and notice I'm starting my selection from A2 in B2 all the way down to my A63 and B63. I want to go into my name box, which is over here up on my upper left hand side, and I want to go ahead and name that as sales tax table. Notice that if I put in these sort of spaces, I'll get an error message and it won't accept the named range. So I wanted to make sure that it's all together. So go ahead and click OK. You want to make sure it gets entered, so you'll go to the drop down and see that it's an option. Now what I can do is go back to my sales transaction, And as I'm doing my VLOOKUP, what I can do is I can go ahead and say, when you're looking at the county, instead of typing in the table array, I can actually start to type in the name that I gave to my sales tax table. So notice you need to make sure that you are copying the words exactly. So I typed in sales tax table and there were no spaces. When I got done entering in the table array, you'll notice that the options started to show up. It shows Albany as 0.8%, Allegheny as 0.85%, so on and so forth. So you want to make sure that the text is exactly in your table array. From there, you'll do the same thing. You'll do your column index number, the position of the value you want to retrieve. In this instance, it will be 2, and we want it to make sure that it's an exact match, so we're going to go ahead and type in the word false. Now I just need to format this as a percentage with 2 decimals, and I can go ahead and click it and drag it down. You'll notice that Steuben County is showing up as an exception, which means there is no exact match. So if we go to our sales tax table, let's go to Steuben and let's look that up. If we go to Steuben, we had a spelling error here where Steuben, S-T-E-U-B-E-N, and in the sales transactions, it is written as U-E. So we just need to go ahead and make a change to that. And really, if we think through, how can we restrict the county names that are selected as for individual transactions, is we can actually do a list for the individual user so that there is no input error of typing in the incorrect value. Okay, so naming ranges is very helpful as it relates to if you have some type of table that you're using in a VLOOKUP transaction. That's where you can add the most value, because you don't need to worry about if you have absolute references or not. It automatically will make the named range an absolute reference. The only thing you need to worry about is if you make a change to the table. So let's say, for example, I added on a county, and I'm just going to label this as County X and give it a rate of 9.0. If I go up to my formula ribbon, you'll notice I have this name manager. So let's go ahead and click on it. You'll see that we only have one named range in this worksheet called sales tax table. If I double click on that, you'll notice that it only goes to cell B63, which was our original range of values. So if I wanted to include County X with a rate of 9%, I would need to edit my named range and go ahead and modify that so that it would also include all the way to row 64. If I insert somewhere in the middle, that's not an issue. It will automatically update. So I'll just go ahead and add O. Now I go back to my named range, my named manager. If I double click and edit, you'll notice it automatically updated from 64 to 65. So if you need to add, sometimes adding in the middle is helpful, or if you add at the end, you just want to make sure you go back to your name manager and edit the range so that it also picks up those additional values that were added. So if I go and I add my, X, you'll see that it'll show up and it populates a sales tax rate of 9%. And that's all. Hope you enjoyed.